What's up, Kobe? How are you, man?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So I, I heard you were at Lakers practice today, weren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just got back not too long ago. Their third third practice of the week. One more to go before they're on the court. They're on the court again for game one of their first round playoff series, best of seven playoff series against the Minnesota Timberwolves Saturday here in LA. So one more practice. See if there's anything else we can learn before the real games start.
Yeah. We're recording this as of April 17th, so it's a couple days before their first game, and it's crazy to think that we're already here. But if you're up for it, man, you ready to just jump right in?
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
Yeah. So obviously the Lakers, they clinched the number 3 seed, right? 50 and
Mm,
32. I mean, it's really been one of their best runs since, and if I'm not mistaken, their best run since like 2019, 2020. How
yeah.
does this really set the tone, right, for their postseason run here?
Yeah, they for their postseason run, I mean, they had a strong finish, picking up some big wins down the stretch. Obviously, the win over the Rockets to clinch the 50-win season, plus clinching the third seed as well, and that victory. Big win in Dallas. Luka's first game back at American Airlines Center since the shocking trade to the Lakers in early February. You go back, they beat the Rockets the previous week in a pretty big matchup, a big road win over Oklahoma City Thunder. They won four big games in a 5 game stretch with the lone loss before. Well, not counting the Portland game that nobody
Yeah.
played in, but they won 4 out of 5 before that game to really to solidify their spot. Some big wins like the road win over OKC over the Thunder in Oklahoma City. That one Sunday earlier in the month. So they've had some big wins. They've had some big wins. Even go back to Grizzlies. Like they've beaten playoff caliber teams. They've beaten high level teams during this run to the postseason, and they've shown a lot of growth in their chemistry, a lot of growth in their camaraderie. And for the Lakers, like this is a significant postseason because this is obviously the first one with Luka, the first one with Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves. This is so they set themselves up well for what they hope to be as a long playoff run.
Yeah, and you mentioned that chemistry, right? I mean, we got to talk about LeBron and Luca, right? I mean, midseason trade, really a trade that came out of nowhere, right? Wasn't really on anybody's radar, but what have you seen in terms of the dynamics between both of those guys, right? Between Luca and LeBron, how has it really evolved? And what do you think it means for their playoff chemistry here?
Yeah, I mean, before they were even teammates, their admiration for one another was clear. Luca, they tell a story. I think Luke even told a story about how his rookie season, when the Mavericks came to LA, like Luca was outside trying to get the jersey from LeBron, and then LeBron has since Luka got to the league before their teammates, he said that Luka is one of, if not his favorite player in the league. So and now they're teammates, so that admiration, that respect is already there. And when they first became teammates, there was the obvious sometimes it feels silly talking point of, well, how are they going to operate when they both need the ball, and even LeBron and Luca and everybody around JJ, they were all just like, these guys are too smart and too good for that to be an issue. They'll figure it out. And yeah, at the beginning it was choppy a little bit in terms of feeling out process in terms of figuring out, all right, how to operate here, how to operate there. But LeBron said it early on in the process of the Lakers integrating Luca into the team. Yeah, he said that, look, like all Austin, Luca's gonna have to have the ball. Like Luca's gonna be the one orchestrating this. Like he's gonna be the one where I guess the one who stirs the drink, so to say. And then even Austin has stepped up his game as a ball handler in the meantime. And then LeBron's just LeBron James, sprinkling in his 24 points, 25 points a game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. So we've seen the chemistry develop, as they've gotten more games. And there was a period of time where like LeBron was out for a couple weeks, Rui was out for a few weeks, so that maybe slow things down a little bit. But ever since everyone's been back since March 22nd in that home loss to the Bulls, those next few weeks or those next couple of weeks really fast track the chemistry and understanding of, all right, where should I be on these plays or these sets? And when Luka does this, what does that mean for LeBron or mean for Austin, or Austin and LeBron are pick and roll and Luka's on the floor? Where should he be? How should he operate? Just certain nuances that they've definitely picked up on over the over the last few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned those nuances and, you know, I think it's been an adjustment period, not only for just those 2 guys, but obviously, I think the biggest beneficiary has been Austin Reeves, right? Especially in the ISO game, the pick and roll, right? So my question is for you is, of those other guys on the roster, right? Guys like Rui Hachimura, right? Guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, right? How important are those glue guys, right, to a championship roster? And what do you think? What is your hope for them, or what do you see where do you see them really kind of slotting in this postseason run?
Yeah, those guys are integral to a postseason run. I mean, those are the guys who, I mean, LeBron has definitely stepped up his play on the defensive end of the floor. Not just since they got Luka, but honestly since December, January onward. Like his defense has been vital for this team's success. That being said, when it comes to Rui, Dorian Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, like those are the guys who you're really relying on to provide high level defense, high level 3-point shooting, and Jared Vanderbilt's case, not just the defense but also playmaking when the opportunities present themselves. So, like those are the guys that can drive. Obviously Luka, LeBron, and Austin will be the drivers of a championship run, but they're the ones who kind of hold it all together. And in precarious moments where a team may double Luka or double LeBron or send a lot of help defense towards Austin or toward Austin. Those are the guys who you know, they hold it together. They're out there defending off more often than not the opposing team's best player. I'd imagine we'll see that a lot this upcoming series against Minnesota, where it's sometimes Rui. I would imagine he'll get the Anthony Edwards assignment, but other times it'll be Jared Vanderbilt. Other times it may be Gabe Vincent. Like we're going to see that, and that's where their value is. It's going to be Dorian Finney-Smith in stretches. Like that's where their value is.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned Minnesota, right? Let's get into that first round matchup, and I do wanna ask you about some X factors, but we'll come to that in a little bit later. But, you mentioned, they got Minnesota, right? Um, what do you think the key challenges are in the matchups for this Lakers roster? And then what are some advantages do you think, for them upcoming here against Minnesota?
I mean, so some of the keys to this is, Minnesota's a big physical team. And the Lakers, even though they have great size across the board. I mean, Luka's their point guard. He's 6'7", Austin 6'5", Rui and LeBron 6'8", 6'8" plus, Jackson 7 foot. Then you have, like I said, you have Dorian and Jared Vanderbilt come off your bench, both 6'7" or taller. So it's not like the Lakers are a smaller team. However, they do lack big man depth behind Jackson Hayes. And if there's one thing that Minnesota is, or amongst the main things that they're a big physical team, and they really lean into that part of the identity between. I mean, obviously you have Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Jay McDaniels, who's just this big giant wing, and then they have the perimeter defenders are very physical as well. So how and this hasn't been so much of an issue lately, but how are the Lakers able to handle that physicality, that
Yeah.
physical presence, game in and game out? And sometimes, I mean, for the Lakers also, they're I guess we can get into it now. Like for them, their curveball sometimes is against bigger teams. They'll play these, I don't call them small ball lineups because again, they're not that small. They're more so just centerless lineups. When you have Rui and Dorian and LeBron on the floor together with Austin and Luka in the backcourt, can those lineups produce at the same efficiency and effectiveness that they did during the regular season against a team that will try its best not to be playing small lineups in the Timberwolves?
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the biggest thing is Anthony Edwards, right? Who do you
Hmm.
think is gonna match up, on the defensive end against Anthony Edwards and be able to really contain arguably one of Ant's really best seasons, right, this year?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do believe that Rui is going to be the one who draws that assignment, at least early on. I mean, if you just look at the starting lineup, you're gonna. Yeah, I guess if I answer that one, I can kind of try to imagine what they're gonna do through the entire lineup. But I'd imagine that at least starting off, and again, I mean, the Lakers will probably switch. They'll maybe put two on the ball and pick and rolls, trap against Anthony Edwards. But I'd imagine Jackson Hayes starts off on Rudy Gobert.
Hmm.
LeBron will more than likely start off on Julius Randle. Maybe you put Luka on Jaden McDaniels, Austin on Mike Conley, and then you put Rui on Anthony Edwards to get a bigger body, a more physical body, long arm Rui Hachimura against Anthony Edwards, uh, just to be more disruptive. And then even from there, again, you're going to probably switch a lot of pick and rolls. I am curious to see if maybe to avoid mismatches. I wonder if we see sometimes maybe like LeBron or Dorian, but I mean, we're going to see it in small ball lineups.
Hmm.
One of those two guarding Rudy. So if they do go to pick and rolls between Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, they just switch that action to really disrupt it or slow it down, or any pick and rolls involving a big man, Naz Reid. But at least to start off, I do anticipate a lot of Rui Hachimura on Anthony Edwards, at least in game one, and then from there something that talking with people, being around the team, um, is that going into like sometimes you think like, oh, how's the series going to go? What's it going to look like? Down the line. I'm really trying to just approach it as what's game one going to look like? Because then game one can set the tone for
Yes.
games 2 through 4, 2 through 5, 2 through 6 down the line. So that's at least in game one. I would expect Rui Hachimura to get a significant amount of the defensive workload against Anthony Edwards.
Hmm. So who's your X factor for the Lakers this series?
Rui,
Yeah.
Rui, and not just because he'll be taking on the Anthony Edwards defensive assignment. At least I believe going into it, I believe he will. I think it's also because he is. Between obviously the defense, um, the potentially going against Anthony Edwards and guarding him quite a bit, significant amount. But also, there are going to be times where he's going to have the Lakers have between Austin, LeBron, uh, and Luka. They have guys who can operate very well in the pick and roll, who can ISO. Rui, LeBron, Luka can all post up. Like they can get their offense. They can get to what they want to offensively in multiple ways. And again, Minnesota statistically strong defensive team. They have a lot of physical, very good defenders, but you can only allocate so many defensive resources to only so many people. So on the other side of it, defensive matchups for Minnesota, which I'm very curious to see how they match up. Let's say they put just I don't know if this is going to be the case. I actually doubt it would be the case just because of, and you'll see why I doubt it. But let's say they put Anthony Edwards on Austin Reeves, Julius Randle on LeBron, Jaden McDaniels on Luka, and Rudy Gobert on Jackson Hayes. Well, that leaves Mike Conley on Rui Hachimura, a player who is much taller and much bigger than him, and that can just open up post-up opportunities, cross matches, and transitions. So Rui has to take advantage of. My point being, Rui has to take advantage of having, quote unquote, lesser defenders on him. Being able to get out of transition, knock down his open threes, knock down the shots that Luka, LeBron, and Austin are going to create for him. You know, in conjunction with the defensive responsibilities he'll have throughout the series, guarding one of the most athletic and one of the most dynamic players in the league, Anthony Edwards. So for me, that's why he is, especially coming off of a disappointing playoff performance last season against the Denver Nuggets, just not playing to the level that he did to close last regular season. That's another reason why he in his um, in his performances that were not up to his standard. We saw just how much they needed from him in that Denver series, and when times where he's been absent this year, it's been really noticeable when he's not been on the floor. So even with him still working through his knee issue, he told us the other day, I think it was yesterday, he told us that he's feeling better and the time off has helped and the days in between games will also help. He's going to be crucial. He's going to be a crucial player, and again, I mentioned that obviously LeBron, Luka, and Austin are driving this thing, but they need Rui Hachimura to play up to his standard to win the series.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's my X factor as well. I mean, I was going to ask you about the knee and how he was, how he was holding up on that end. But you mentioned, right, his playoff performance last year after a pretty stellar, right, 2023, right, when they had that run to the Western Conference Finals. So, um, the talk right around our circles here, and when I say our circles in the industry, has always been about the Lakers' size, right? But they figured out a way, right, to work around, guarding bigger players, mainly, right? You covered the Jokic game, right, where they really shut him down. How do you think that can apply to some of the Minnesota's bigs, right? Particularly Naz Reid, right, stands out to me, right? He's not really a post up
Mhm.
guy, but he can space the floor. Like, what do you think is going to be their approach to guys like that? And although Gobert's, you've been in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, he is an interior guy that is big. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, in terms of how, I mean, it's going to be different in terms of how they approach the Nas Reeds or even the Rudy Gobert, um, I guess offensive game plans or defensive game plans against their offensive skill sets. Because I mean, we saw it against Jokic, we saw it against Karl Anthony Towns, Houston with Şengün. I mean, they have ways that they like to send help and they like to show bodies against some of these more premier post players, premier big men. And as good as Rudy Gobert is in the league, he's not that, at least offensively. And then Nas Reed, I mean, I think if they're seeing a lot of Nas Reed on the floor in this series, and Nas Reed is the only big man on the floor in this series, I think the Lakers are probably getting their way in terms of, because I mean, if Nas Reed is the only center on the floor, that means Rudy Gobert is not. And I think this is a win for the Lakers just because, as good as Nas Reed is offensively, his shooting, scoring, not that good of a defender. And he could be, JJ used to like, JJ Redick likes to use the term duck. He could be a duck, or he could be someone that the Lakers could target offensively if it's just Nas Reed on the floor alongside Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels in the front court, or Jaden, or Julius Randle, and going down the line of other Minnesota front court players, or even their guards if they go like smaller lineups. I think if the Lakers force, or if the Timberwolves find themselves playing either smaller lineups or less traditional lineups, then I think that's a win for the Lakers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to circle back to Austin Reeves a little bit here. Um, you know, Obviously, other than being just such a big beneficiary, right? Since the Luka trade, excuse me, and how much they've, now will run the offense right through him.
Yeah.
There's been all this argument: is he like the best third option in the NBA? But to you, I'm really curious to know, like, where do you think Austin's value really be felt the most in this series?
So, and it's funny you asked that because when I was thinking about possible ways that Minnesota can match up, for so going back to watching not just the last time the Lakers played the Mavericks, but also you know the times that and the not Lakers played the Mavericks, the last time the Lakers played the Timberwolves, but not just that, but when the Mavericks played the Timberwolves and Luka was a part of in Dallas, they put Jay McDaniels on Luka. Like that was his primary defensive assignment. But last season in the playoffs and the Western Conference Finals, as the playoffs progressed, as that series progressed, we saw Jaden McDaniels take on that Luka assignment just a little bit less. Like as the series went on, a little bit more Anthony Edwards, a little bit more Kyle Anderson slow mo. We just saw, Luka was. Let's just be honest. Luka was cooking him. Luka was cooking Jaden McDaniels. So and I want I'm to bring it back to Austin. I wonder if, because I think Austin is again a driving force for this team offensively, just because of its ability to quickly create offense, either keep the chain moving or north south. He's going to the rim, he's getting into the paint, and he can put pressure on a team's defense in a different way than Luca does. Like Luca can put pressure on a team just by having the ball, and teams are afraid of his pull-up shooting or his ability to drive to the basket, sometimes very slowly, and you're like, how are you not able to stay in front of this guy? And next thing you know, he's just bumping guys off of him, and next thing you know, he's right there at the rim for an easy lay-in. Austin is just quick, fast, less methodical. It's just go, go, go. And I wonder if if I was Minnesota, would I try to actually allocate more resources towards slowing down Austin because you can understand, like you see the value he brings in terms of just downhill presence, not even getting into the playmaking presence he provides or even the pull up shooting he provides, but just in terms of downhill presence, something I wonder is will there be a point in this series where we see either Nikhil Alexander Walker, starting in place of Mike Conley or playing significant minutes over Mike Conley, or will we see moments where the Timberwolves switch defensive assignments and they put, say, Jenny McDaniels on Austin, and they put, um, Anthony Edwards on Luka, or yeah, I guess that would be maybe the first adjustment. I wonder just because I think if I'm Minnesota, like Luka's probably going to get his regardless of who you put on him, right? I mean, same probably you can say the same for players like Anthony Edwards. We said the same thing about LeBron for decades. Like he's going to get his regardless of who the defensive assignment is. But I do wonder if you can disrupt Austin just enough where you can, especially in those moments where it's Austin and LeBron on the floor without Luka. Can that be a difference in the series? Because Austin to me is, you know, sometimes people talk about him as a secondary playmaker, third in the hierarchy. Sometimes he's the primary guy,
Yes.
just creating for everyone else, creating for LeBron. In these Austin LeBron pick and roll. So I do wonder how much, or if Minnesota does get to a point, if they don't get to that point to start the series, where they're really keen in on, all right, let's slow down Austin or disrupt his rhythm, and that could be a way that they could pull out a game or two, and they could potentially win the series.
Yeah, and not to mention his like you mentioned his playmaking ability, but his also his ability to get to the free throw line, right? That downhill
Yeah,
presence,
downhill.
right? And I think that's going to create some havoc, man, for guys like Gobert and those rim protectors. Because if you remove that, man, it really frees up like that triangle, those three guys, right, on the perimeter, and it really just opens up the basket and what the offense really wants to do. And speaking of the offense, I mean, we got JJ Redick first year, right, 50-win coach. I'm really curious to hear. I mean, like, he's really helped lead this team to a really strong finish. They had that run where, obviously LeBron went out and, you know, I think it was a pretty good, if there was a time for LeBron to go out, that's probably the time for it. But, um,
Yeah.
how is like Redick's coaching really influenced the Lakers this year? And what's really been his mindset? What have you seen from him, not only in practice, but in his post game, his approach to coaching, and what he's going to really mean for this, for in his first postseason here?
Yeah, I mean, he's spoken throughout the season about just, you know, even though he came into the year, you obviously have goals and aspirations, just to expect the unexpected, like have an open mind. It's gonna, it could be different, or there could be things that happen that you just may not expect, but just be open-minded to expect the unexpected. And I think he's done well with figuring out when to push certain buttons with this group, whether it's something like a starting lineup change or when to have a meeting with your best three players before a big game in Memphis, just figuring out when are the right buttons to push, or what buttons to push, when to push them. And he's there is a he's a oriented person, detail oriented coach, and I think for this group it's something that they'll greatly benefit from come playoff time, especially when they have 2 days in between games 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and I think 5 and 6. I think 5 and 6. When you have just that time off in between games, I think that's going to be something that they really that really shows itself in terms of his not just him but also his coaching staff's ability to prepare the players for for potentially long series.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, right, a long series and what the series could really look like, right, for the Lakers coming up here. How important do you think it is for them to really secure a game one win at home, right, at Crypto.com Arena?
It would be huge. I mean, it's the first time since April 2012 that the Lakers will open up a playoff series in Los Angeles. I mean, they haven't. This is just the second time they've been a top 4 seed in the playoffs in the past 13 years. And one of those times was 2019, 2020 when they won the championship, but those playoffs were played inside the bubble because of the pandemic. So there's going to be an energy. There's going to be an excitement surrounding the Lakers, surrounding the team inside the arena, just because it has been so long since they've been able to open the playoffs in their own building. So it would be huge if they're able to open the playoffs with a victory. It wouldn't if they didn't. It would not be the end of the world because all you got to do is well, quote unquote all. But then in that state, you focus on game two, and then you focus on getting at least one win in Minnesota after that, and it's you're coming back home, best of three series essentially with two games at home. But it would be significant just for the spirit of the team, but also the spirit of the fan base to pull out that game one victory. Uh, again, first time in 13 years they've been in this position.
Yeah, which is, I mean, crazy to think about, right? And, you know, obviously 2019, 2020 went their way. It's a very peculiar season to say the least,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, overall, just with this, you were at practice today. What does the energy really feel like around the team? Is it like business as usual, just another game, right? At crypto.com arena? Or, how do you think really where's the team's mindset, do you feel kind of going into this series?
yeah. I mean, it definitely does feel like a business like approach in that sense, just because the other thing is this is a team full of veterans.
Yeah.
LeBron's obviously done and seen it all.
Yes, he has.
He's been on this journey several times. He's started playoff series on the road, started them at home. Like this is nothing new to him. Obviously, Luka is coming off leading his team to the NBA Finals, a journey that he played. And then two seasons before that, he led his team to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, you go on down the line. Austin Reeves, he's played in the Western Conference Finals and had that miraculous run with the Lakers a couple years ago. Gabe Vincent, he was a part of that 2023 Miami Heat team that made it to the finals. He was also on that 2019-2020 team that he that made it to the finals as well, or he was within the organization at that point. Jordan Finney-Smith been to the Western Conference Finals. Rui Hachimura played in the Western Conference Finals. Jerry Vanderbilt, Western Conference. So there's just a certain level of experience and know-how in terms of just how to handle the emotions of this part, especially when you do have a week plus off before games or before game one. Just knowing how to handle the emotional part of it and not get too amped up too early in the week, and then next thing you know, you're just burnt out on energy to go to start game one. Like this is a veteran group that knows how to handle those emotions.
Yeah, and I got to look at the broader picture here, right? I got to look at, right, matchups like Oklahoma City, right? Matchups like, the Boston Celtics. I mean, how the Lakers really stack up against these like top contenders, right? And what do you think is their best matchup kind of moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in the West, they match up just as well as anybody against Oklahoma City. I mean, right now, if you ask me, I would say that Oklahoma City should be the team representing the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. But we just saw what was that a week and a half ago, or a little over a week ago, where the Lakers, not just blew out the Thunder in their own building last Sunday, but then they came back 2 days later and they were up 108, 107 before Luka Dončić was ejected after picking up his second technical foul in a game that was early on high scoring, but then in the second half really became slowed down, became physical. So the Lakers, at least in those two games, showed that they cannot just hang with the best team in the league or the team that had the best record in the league, but they could beat them. They could beat them, and they provided just as much of a challenge for the Thunder as any team has all season long. So from a Western Conference perspective, I mean the Lakers have they they have tough matchups. Before the first round was solidified, I was, the conversations with people. I was telling people, and it also seemed like a general consensus that the Clippers could be the toughest matchup, potential toughest matchup for the Lakers in the first round. Then the Warriors, then Minnesota or Denver, depending on who you ask. Then Memphis. So I mean, depending on how things go, the Lakers could see the Warriors in the second round if the Warriors are able to beat the Rockets, and that could be a series that goes, 6-7. It could go either way depending on just how the games go. But especially because the Warriors, I think I mentioned this earlier, the Lakers' small ball or centerless lineups have been something that they've really leaned on to great success. Well, the Warriors know all about that after
Yes.
playing Draymond at center for almost a decade and really leaning on those looks to high success. So um, that could be a tough matchup for the Lakers just from the standpoint of your curveball, what you do best. There may be a team looking across from you that's like, awesome, that's great. We can do this even better. Or we'd actually like to play that way. We don't mind playing without a big man. We actually want to play the same style that you do. So kind of like there's that contrast between the Lakers and the Timberwolves in terms of styles. The Warriors could look at the Lakers and be like, no, we mastered that style. We'll welcome it. So to me, the Warriors could be a tough matchup in the second round if it comes to that. And then the Western Conference Finals, whether it's the Thunder, who I believe should make it there, or even the Clippers, if the Thunder don't make it there, like those could also be teams that would challenge, at least in my eyes, challenge the Lakers more than any other team this season. And then if you get to the finals, I mean, I outside, I think Boston's the only team that would stop the Lakers from. I mean, Cleveland's been. I mean, the tough part about Cleveland is it's also been so long since they played Cleveland. Like they played them in October, I want to say, and they played them again in December. It was Dorian Finney-Smith's first game with the team, and Cleveland won both games. But it's just so hard to judge because both those games were when the Lakers didn't have Luka.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Clippers. I think that's a scary matchup for anybody in this opening round. And I mean, the West has been so highly competitive, right, this year. I mean, so my question is for you is like what really, and if you touched on this, I want to hear a little more, like what really sets this Lakers team apart, right, from the rest of the Western Conference?
LeBron James, Luka Doncic All Star game.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Just because no, it's the answer. It's their answer just from the standpoint of there's no other team that has a three-headed perimeter monster like that. Just straight up. Like that's the answer. I mean, yeah, you can go into the versatility of having guys like Rui Hachimura, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jerry Vanderbilt, the ability to, they've shown the ability to play hard, be locked in certain details, but there's not a team that, and the fact that the malleability of those three too. There are moments where Luka and LeBron, or Luka and Austin can be operating with LeBron off the ball, or Austin and LeBron can be operating with Luka off the ball. Uh, there's a versatility to that, and the collective playmaking that those three have, and just opening up opportunities for other players or just themselves as a collective. It's off the charts. So what separates them is the fact that they have one of the greatest players of all time and LeBron still playing at a high level. They have a player who's perceived to be one of the greats in the making in Luka, one of the greatest playmakers of this generation in the modern NBA. Then they have a player in Austin Reeves who's been playing at an all-star level for a couple months now, a few months at this point. To have them all on the same team humming, they all finished the season averaging at least 20 points, and honestly, it was even more impressive in the last couple to few weeks of the season in terms of just how they're able to find that collective chemistry and know-how. That's what separates them. There's no, I mean, I'm trying to think of it. I don't even know if there's another team in league history that's had that level of collective scoring, playmaking from their top three ball handlers, from their top three perimeter guys. It's different, and I don't know if there are many teams who are. I mean, the Celtics, right? The Celtics have the guys who could between Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Those are the guys, but even Minnesota, I mentioned earlier. All right, awesome. You have Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels uh, out there. Uh, someone's got to guard one of the other three, and then you still have to do a Rui Hachimura. Like so, there, and then just the variety of ways that those the big three for the Lakers can get theirs or open up scoring opportunities. That's what makes the difference. That is what makes this group or this team special.
Yeah, and you wrote today, and I think this is the question that's on everybody's mind, right? Um, One, I mean, Luka said, right, this team is willing to go to war, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful statement, but realistically, I mean, what are the Lakers' title chances really this postseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely above a non-zero chance for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, if you ask me right now, I mean, they amongst the West teams, it feels like they have the second best chance, second or third, depending on where you slot the Clippers, um, or even the Warriors. Like to me, those are the top four teams. And even I know they weren't the top four in the standings. I don't think because what the OKC's one, Lakers are three, Clippers are five, and Warriors are seven. But to me, those are the top four teams in terms of Western Conference championship aspirations, and those are the four teams actually I expect to make it to the second round. So I expect to have a second round between Lakers, Warriors, Clippers, Thunder. Uh, but amongst those four, I think you could put the. I mean, the Lakers are obviously the highest seed amongst those four, second highest rather amongst those four teams, and I think they have as good of a shot as any non OKC team to make it to the finals.
Awesome. Well, it's all at the time of this podcast. It's Thursday here. We'll see on Saturday how it goes. Khobi, thank you so much, man, for joining us, and yeah, thanks guys for watching. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate this.